My boss said we can't afford personal tragedy time off when my sister passed away. I nodded and continued working. 2 weeks later, she was standing in my office, hands shaking, begging for my help. That's when she learned what he'd been doing all along. Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where loyalty dies, lies bleed out, and the truth hits like a slap to the face. These aren't just stories, they're confessions soaked in betrayal and regret. Ever spotted a red flag when it was already too late? Say it in the comments. Let's tear into today's tale. I stood in front of Petra's glass desk, my phone still hot in my palm from the cow that had just shattered my world. My sister died an hour ago, I managed to say, my voice barely audible. I need 5 days to go home for the funeral and be with my family. Petra didn't look up from her computer. The clicking of her keyboard continued for 10 more seconds before she finally raised her eyes. The merger presentation is Monday. The board meeting is Wednesday. The investor tour is Friday. She listed each item as if reading ingredients on a package. We can't afford personal tragedy time off right now. LO? The acquisition is too important. She returned to typing, then added without looking up, take the weekend. Be back Monday morning. I felt something crack inside me. Not my heart, but something harder, something foundational. I nodded mechanically and walked out. What she didn't know, as I returned to my desk, was that her company's most valuable asset, the distribution algorithm that had cut operational costs by 40, had been entirely my creation. My name appeared nowhere in the documentation, but my fingerprints were on every line of code. Linnea's last words to me had been, "Stop hiding, Ellie. The world needs what you can do." I was done hiding. Before I continue with what happened next, I want to thank you for clicking on this video. What you're about to hear isn't just a story of workplace injustice. It's about recognizing your worth when others refuse to see it. If you've ever had your contributions overlooked or your humanity dismissed as inconvenient, this one's for you. Stay until the end, because the moment Petra showed up trembling at my door weeks later is just the beginning of what happens when quiet competence finally speaks up. And if you're enjoying our true stories, please hit like and subscribe. We post new content every week, and your support helps us reach others who need to hear these experiences. My name is Alone Derby, and until 2 months ago, I was the invisible engineer behind one of the fastest growing logistics companies in the Midwest. I'm not naturally confrontational. I was raised to believe that good work speaks for itself. My sister Lana was the opposite, bold, outspoken, and fiercely protective of me. We lost our parents young, and she stepped into their role without hesitation, working extra jobs to put me through college. While I pursued computer science, Lana battled an autoimmune condition that worsened over the years. Still, she pushed me to aim higher, to demand recognition for my work. I promised her I would someday. But then I landed at a company where my quiet nature was mistaken for weakness, and where my boss, Petra, built her reputation by harvesting the innovations of employees like me. I'd spent a year perfecting a distribution algorithm that revolutionized how the company operated. It predicted supply chain disruptions, optimized routing, and slashed costs dramatically. When I presented it to Petra privately, she immediately saw its potential, not for the company, but for her career. She repackaged my work, presented it to the board as her brainchild, and was hailed as a visionary. I said nothing, focusing instead on refining the system while Petra collected accolades. Why didn't I speak up? Partly habit, partly calculation. I was documenting everything, building my case carefully and truthfully. I was distracted by Linea's worsening condition. We spoke daily, and I channeled my frustration into caring for her, promising that soon he'd step into the light as she had always encouraged. But time ran out. Lana's condition deteriorated rapidly, and I received the call on a Tuesday morning. By the time I reached Petra's office, my sister was gone. After Petra denied my bereavement leave, I didn't rage or quit. I returned to my desk, opened my laptop, and made 3 decisions. First, I would attend my sister's funeral, losing sick days without explanation. Second, I would no longer contribute any innovations with it proper attribution. Third, I would ensure that Petra would understand exactly what she had dismissed when she reduced my sister's death to an inconvenience. The funeral was small but beautiful. Lana had planned much of it herself, including a letter she'd written to be read aloud. To those who diminish you, she had written, offer neither anger nor forgiveness, offer consequences. I returned to work on Monday as instructed, outwardly unchanged. Petra didn't ask about my weekend or mention my loss. The merger presentation went flawlessly. I made sure of it, correcting errors in Petra's slides after hours. The board meeting brought enthusiastic approval for our growth strategy. The investor tour generated excitement. Petra took credit for all of it, as expected. What she didn't notice was that I had begun having coffee with department heads, explaining the intricacies of the distribution system that they relied on but didn't fully understand. I wasn't complaining about lack of credit. I was simply ensuring that everyone knew exactly how the system worked and who had built it. I documented every meeting meticulously. Fascinating, said our operations director after I walked him through the algorithm. I had no idea you developed this entire system. Petra always presents it as a team effort that she directs. I smiled. Knowledge transfer is important for company resilience. If anything happened to me, the company would need to understand how everything works. By the end of the week, I had quietly educated every key person in the company about my role. Not accusatory, not bitter, just factual. I also reached out to 3 industry contacts who had expressed interest in our distribution methods at the last trade show. We scheduled coffee meetings for the following week. Meanwhile, the acquisition that Petra prioritized over my bereavement was showing signs of trouble. The potential buyers were impressed by our efficiency metrics, but had concerns about sustainability. They wanted to meet with the innovation team behind the distribution system, the system that Petra had claimed as her own creation. They're sending their technical team on Thursday, Petra announced in the Monday morning meeting. I need everyone prepared to demonstrate how our system works. Her eyes slid past me as if I were wallpaper. Will you be leading the technical presentation? Asked our marketing director. Of course, Petra replied. It's my system. I said nothing, but typed a quick email under the tableau to our board chair, requesting a private meeting that afternoon. His response came immediately. My office. PM. That meeting lasted exactly 27 minutes. I brought documentation of my work, testimonials from department heads, and a demonstration of system elements that only its creator would know. I explained that I wasn't looking to create drama. I simply wanted the upcoming acquisition meetings to proceed with transparency. The chair's expression changed from confusion to concern to calculation as I spoke. Why are you bringing this to me now? He asked finally. My sister died 2 weeks ago, I said simply. Her last wish was for me to stop hiding my light. I promised her I would. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry for your loss, and I apologize on behalf of the companion if we failed to acknowledge it properly. Thank you. As for next steps, I'm not asking for Petra to be punished. I'm asking for the opportunity to represent my own work to the acquisition team and for proper attribution going forward. He studied me for a long moment. Let me discuss this with the other board members. I'll be in touch tomorrow. I thanked him and left, uncertain what would follow, but feeling Lana's presence like a hand on my shoulder. The next day passed without word from the board. I continued my work, finalizing preparations for the acquisition team's visit. Petra seemed increasingly tense, checking her phone constantly and disappearing for long stretches. I later learned she'd been called into multiple emergency board meetings. On Wednesday morning, I arrived to find an email requesting my presence in the conference room at 9:00 a.m. When I entered, the entire board was seated, along with our legal counsel. Petra was not present. Alone, the chair began. We've spent the past day verifying the information you shared. We've also reviewed communications and presentations from the past year. I nodded, waiting. What we found is deeply concerning. Not only has your work been systematically misattributed, but the acquisition team specifically requested to meet the algorithm's creator after their technical team reviewed our documentation. They identified discrepancies that suggested the person presenting the system wasn't the person who built it. I kept my expression neutral. Despite the vindication flooding through me, we're making immediate changes to our leadership structure, he continued. We've placed Petra on administrative leave pending a full investigation, and we're creating a new position, Chief Innovation Officer, which we'd like to offer to you. I felt a moment of vertigo as if the ground had shifted beneath me. Thank you, I said carefully. I appreciate your thoroughness. Before I accept, I'd like to propose a company policy change as part of my conditions. Go on, he said. I'd like to implement a minimum 3-week bereavement leave policy for immediate family members with no questions asked. Some things are more important than business, and our company should reflect that value. The board members exchanged glances. Then the chair nodded. Consider it done. Is there anything else? Yes, I said. I'd like to be the one to inform Petra of these changes. 2 hours later, I was sitting in what had been my small office when the door opened. Petra stood there, her face drained of color, hands visibly trembling. I need your help, she whispered, voice barely audible. The investors are threatening to pull out tomorrow unless someone can convince them otherwise. The board said you're the only one who can save the acquisition. I looked at her calmly, saying nothing. Please, she continued, a note of desperation creeping in. Whatever issues we've had, this is about the company's survival. Everyone's jobs are at stake. I leaned forward slightly, including yours. Her eyes widened as understanding dawned. You knew. You've known all along what was happening. That you took credit for my work? Yes. That you built your reputation and the innovations of others? Absolutely. That you denied me the Chinchetto say goodbye to my sister properly because an acquisition meeting was more important. That part I'll never forget. Petra swallowed hard. I can explain. There's no need. I interrupted gently. The board has already made their decision. I stood and walked around my desk, handing her a document. This isn't a termination notice. It's a reassignment. You're being moved to project support. You'll be working under the new Chief Innovation Officer. Her hands shook as she took the paper. And who would that be? Me, I said simply. The color drained further from her face. You can't do this. I built this department. No, Petra, you didn't build anything. You took credit for what others built, and now everyone knows it. She stared at me, recognition finally dawning. This isn't about the work at all, is it? She asked. This is about your sister. This is about consequences. I corrected her. My sister taught me that some lessons can only be learned through experience. You're about to learn what it feels like when someone else controls your future and dismisses what matters to you. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Now, let's discuss how you're going to support me in tomorrow's acquisition meeting. After all, we can't afford any personal tragedies right now. The acquisition is too important. Petra sank into the chair, the paper trembling in her hands. You've been planning this, she whispered, not a question, but a realization. No, I corrected her. I've been doing my job exceptionally well while documenting everything. The planning only started when you showed me exactly who you were 2 weeks ago. Her eyes narrowed slightly. So, this is revenge. I leaned back in my chair and considered her. Is it Revengetto want credit for your work? Is it Revengetto expect basic human decency when facing a personal tragedy? Or is it simply balance? I opened my laptop and turned it to face her. On the screen was tomorrow's presentation for the acquisition team. Your name isn't anywhere on this, she noted, scrolling through. Neither was mine on any of the presentations Sia gave using my work. I replied calmly. The difference is, I'm giving you a chance to contribute. Your institutional knowledge is valuable, Petra. I'm not erasing you. I'm repositioning you. Something shifted in her expression, a flash of comprehension followed by calculation. I recognized it immediately. Petra was looking for leverage, for a way to turn this situation to her advantage. The acquisition team respects me, she said, straightening slightly. They've been dealing with me for months. If I suddenly disappear or appear demoted, they'll get nervous. You're right, I acknowledged. That's why you'll be introducing me tomorrow as the creator of the distribution system and expressing how proud you are of nurturing talent. You'll explain that our restructuring grew our commitment to innovation leadership. Her laugh was brittle. And why would I do that? I closed my laptop gently. Because the alternative is the board releasing their findings about systematic credit misappropriation. Because 3 potential employers have already contacted me about bringing my distribution system to them, and I've declined out of loyalty to this company, because deep down, you know this outcome is more merciful than what you deserve. Petra stared at me, trying to gauge how much of this was bluff. I held her gaze steadily until she looked away. What do you need me to do? She asked finally, defeat edging into her voice. I pulled out a folder. Here's the script for tomorrow. Review it tonight. We'll meet at 7 o'clock a.m. to rehearse. One more thing. I opened my drawer and placed a small silver frame on my desk. Inside was a photo of Lana laughing on a beach from our last vacation together. This stays on my desk during every meeting as a reminder of what matters. Petra glanced at the photo, then quickly away. Is that her? Your sister? Yes. Her name was Linnea. A flicker of something, perhaps genuine remorse, crossed Petra's face. I'm sorry about your sister. Thank you, I said, my voice softening slightly. That's the first time you've acknowledged her death. The silence stretched. between us, heavy with unspoken recriminations and missed opportunities for basic humanity. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock a.m., I finally said, "Don't be late." After Petra left, I sat alone in my office, running my fingers over Lana's photograph. "I did it," I whispered to her image. "Not how you would have. You would have been much louder, but I did it." I could almost hear her laugh, feel her hand squeezing my shoulder. "That's my quiet hurricane sister." The acquisition meeting the next morning went precisely as planned. Petra performed her role flawlessly, introducing me as the brilliant mind behind our revolutionary distribution system. If the acquisition team noticed the tension beneath her polished presentation, they didn't show it. When it was my turn to speak, I demonstrated aspects of the algorithm that only its creator could explain. The technical team leaned forward in their chairs, their questions becoming increasingly enthusiastic. By the end of the presentation, the lead investor was discussing implementation timelines rather than whether to proceed. "I'm curious," their CTO asked during a break. "Why haven't we met you before now, Eloine?" Before I could answer, Petra stepped in smoothly. "That's on me. I've been too focused on presenting results without properly highlighting the team behind them. It's something our company is actively correcting with our recent restructuring." I caught her eye briefly. "It was a good answer, perhaps the first genuinely collaborative moment between us." The acquisition was approved by the end of the day. As the investors left, the board chair pulled me aside. "Extraordinary work," he said. "Both the presentation and how you handled Petra. Many would have pushed for termination. Firing her wouldn't teach her anything." I replied, "This way, she learns what it means to have someone else control your professional narrative." He nodded thoughtfully. "Your sister would be proud." I felt my chest tighten. "You didn't know her." No, he agreed. "But I know what it means to lose someone, my wife. 3 years ago, cancer." The simple admission caught me off guard. "I'm sorry. The 3-week bereavement policy you proposed, I'm expanding it to 4 weeks, with an option for reduced hours during the transition back." The board approved it unanimously. This morning, tears pricked at my eyes unexpectedly. "Thank you." "No, thank you for reminding us that companies are made of people, not just productivity metrics." That evening, I stayed late, sitting in my new office, Petra's former space, which I'd already begun transforming. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city lights emerging as dusk fell. I was reviewing department budgets when a knock came at my door. Petra stood there, looking smaller somehow, without her usual commanding presence. "Do you have a minute?" I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. "Of course," she sat, placing a sleek leather portfolio on the desk between us. "This contains all the client contacts and relationship notes I've maintained over the years. Some of it isn't in the company system." She pushed it toward me. "You'll need it." I opened the portfolio, surprised by the meticulously organized contents. "This is comprehensive. I built those relationships over a decade," she said quietly. "Whatever else you think of me, I did that part well." I nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. "Why are you giving me this?" Petra looked down at her hands. "I received a job offer today, a lateral move to a smaller company, less prestige, but a fresh start." "You're resigning?" I hadn't expected this. "Yes, but I wanted to do this properly. A clean handoff." I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to seeing. Instead, I found something like resignation mixed with relief. "What changed?" I asked. She was quiet for so long, I thought she might not answer. "My mother called this afternoon," she finally said. "My father had a stroke, minor but a warning sign." I told her I couldn't come right away because we were finishing the acquisition. Petra's voice faltered slightly. She said she understood. That's when I realized I'd trained everyone in my life to expect absence when they needed presence. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Take the time you need with your family," I said. "The new bereavement policy includes family medical emergencies." A bitter smile touched her lips. "I don't work here anymore, remember? Your resignation hasn't been processed. As far as HR is concerned, you're still employed for the next 2 weeks. Use the time." Petra looked at me with genuine confusion. "Why would you do that for me after everything?" I thought about Lana, about what she would say in this moment. Because breaking a cycle of cruelty requires someone to make a different choice. It might as well be me. She nodded slowly, then stood to leave. The door. She paused. "For what it's worth, I was wrong about you, Eloine. I thought your quietness was weakness." "It's not. No, I agreed. It never was." After she left, I called Lana's partner, Dante. I've been thinking about Lana's foundation idea, I said when he answered. The one for supporting families during medical crisis. Her dream project, Dante replied, his voice warming at the memory. She talked about it constantly those last few months. I want to fund it. Not just a donation, I want to establish it properly, with dedicated staff. The silence on the other end stretched until I heard what might have been a muffled sob. She would have been ecstatic. He finally managed. I know, and I think I know exactly how to structure it. Over the next month, as I settled into my new role, I developed a dual-focused IT work. I built a true innovation team, ensuring every member received proper credit for their contributions. I instituted transparent attribution practices that became a selling point for recruiting top talent. Simultaneously, I established the Linea Foundation, designed to provide financial and logistical support to families facing medical crisis. The foundation's first initiative, partnering with companies to implement comprehensive bereavement and family emergency policies. 6 months after the acquisition, our company became the foundation's first corporate partner, expanding our bereavement policy further and creating flexible work arrangements for employees with family health emergencies. The program became a case study in business schools for how compassionate policies improved retention and productivity. 1 year to the day after Lana's death, I stood in our company auditorium, addressing all employees. Today, we're closing our offices worldwide for our first annual Day of Compassion. I announced, each of you will receive paid time to volunteer with organizations supporting families in health crisis or to spend with your own loved ones. This day commemorates my sister Linnea, but it also honors everyone you've lost, everyone you cherish. As I looked out at the assembled faces, I spotted Petra at the back of the room. She had returned briefly for the event. At my invitation, our eyes met, and she gave a small nod of acknowledgement. After the ceremony, she approached me. The foundation is doing remarkable work, she said. 3 companies in my industry have adopted your policies. That's wonderful, I replied, genuinely pleased. How's your father? Recovering well. I've been working remotely 2 days a week to spend time with my parents. She smiled faintly, something I never would have considered in my old life. And the new company? Different, better in some ways. I'm learning to let my team shine without feeling threatened. It's humbling. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, 2 people who had traveled a complicated path from adversary to something not quite friendship, but perhaps mutual respect. She would have liked this, Petra said, gesturing to the Day of Compassion banners. Your sister? Yes, I agreed, feeling Lana's presence strongly, though she would have insisted on much louder music, and probably dancing. Petra laughed softly. Next year, perhaps. As she turned to leave, she added, you know, I expected your revenge to be destroying my career. Instead, you somehow made me better at it. That's a unique form of justice. I watched her walk away, reflecting on the journey of the past year. When I'd stood in Petra's office that day, newly bereaved and being denied the chance to properly grieve, I couldn't have imagined where it would lead. The revenge fantasy would have been seeing Petra humiliated, fired, professionally ruined. The reality was something more profound, a transformation that rippled outward, changing policies, changing lives, changing me. I touched the small silver frame I now wore as a pendant around my neck. Lana's laughing face visible within it. To those who diminish you offer consequences, she had written. What she hadn't specified was that sometimes the most powerful consequence isn't destruction, but reconstruction. Building something so undeniably better that the old way becomes unthinkable. As I moved through the crowd of employees now preparing to depart for their volunteer assignments, I overheard snippets of conversation about which organizations they'd chosen, which family members they'd reconnect with, each person carrying forward a small piece of Linnea's legacy, most without ever knowing her name. That evening, I visited my sister's grave, placing fresh sunflowers, her favorite, against the headstone. You always told me to stop hiding, I said softly to the quiet earth. I thought you meant my work, my talents, but you meant my power to change things, didn't you? The gentle breeze that rustled the flowers felt like her answer. I traced her name on the stone. I miss you every day, but I see you everywhere now, and every policy changed, every family supported, every person who gets to say a proper goodbye. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cemetery, I made a silent promise to continue building on this foundation of compassion and recognition, not just for Lana, but for everyone who had ever stood in an office, bearing invisible pain, and been told that their humanity was an inconvenience. Some forms of justice aren't swift or dramatic. Some revolutions happen quietly, one policy change at a time, one life improved after another. My quiet revolution had only just begun. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you've ever had your worth questioned or your humanity dismissed, I hope you found some validation in what you heard today. Remember, sometimes the most powerful response isn't an explosion, but a transformation, changing systems rather than just individuals. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more stories of justice, growth, and meaningful change. In the comments, I'd love to hear about policies or changes you've helped implement in your workplace that recognize the full humanity of employees. How have you turned personal pain into positive transformation? Your experiences might inspire others who are just beginning their own journeys toward recognition and respect. Until next time, remember, your quiet strength has power, sometimes more than you know.